everyone. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very, very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Sean Hall. I'm actually joining you. I'm going to say the Gold Coast, Australia. For those of you that are not quite sure where that is, it's in between Sydney and Brisbane. And Kimberly, thank you very much for having me on today.
You're welcome. And I'm eager to know about your whole past leading up into your present. So you're welcome to tell me.
Thank you. So as a bit of background, I'm what you would call an unlicensed medical doctor. By that, it means I'm medically trained, but I don't see patients. And I did this through voluntary election because I took a more research and new product development stream, which my background in medicine helps me with hugely. On top of that, I have an MBA. I also have an LTA. And as of right now, I've been asked to complete my PhD, and I'm thinking about sort of taking that on, pardon the expression, for shits and giggles. You know, why not? But what I've focused on my entire career and what really is my passion is human life sciences. So if I break that down at the most basic level, we have nutrition and we have exercise. And a step up from that, we have what you would call food supplements, we would call nutraceuticals. Remember, I'm in Australia, so things are a little bit different. And I might use words that just don't cross the Pacific correctly. And then above that again, there is new drug development. And I'm not a typical doctor which favors one over the other. In my world, everything has its place. And it's a toolkit, and it's how you prescribe that toolkit to that individual that's before you. So the individuals that typically have been before me, especially in the last decade, have been those that have chronic illnesses. And I'm very passionate about this because in my world, chronic illnesses is big anything we've seen. And that includes the hoorah we had around COVID. So those listening sort of thinking, well, you know, what is a chronic disease? I can guarantee you this. The demographics say that every person on this planet knows someone that has a chronic disease. And if I break it down to the simplest term, we can talk obesity, we can talk diabetes, we can talk cardiovascular disease, and the big one, the one that should be getting the majority of attention, is mental health. And they're just the big ones. There are smaller categories underneath it, which includes ocular, like I'm wearing glasses, down to oral health, because we've got people now that have gum disease. Gum disease is related to a lot of other conditions as well. So my career has been steadfast in this area, and in working with physicians who do treat doctors or working in clinical trial format, which is what I'm more accustomed to. There is a wonderful toolkit out there that physicians can use. It is never one or the other. It will always come down to what is the right fit for you and the symptoms that you're presenting and the ailments that you are presenting. So I've charged my life with trying to work with patients and consumers to understand chronic diseases better, to develop treatment protocols that are more effective. And I say that because in medicine, when we talk chronic illnesses or chronic diseases, the first thing we're taught is management. And we're taught management because the idea of a cure is utopian. So you go see a doctor and you say, Jesus, you know, I've got some major problems, and the doctor diagnoses you with a chronic illness or a chronic disease. Those words are interchangeable. At present, the best you can hope is management. Now, excuse me, we can put people on the moon. We can make phones with AI software on it, and we've got all these wonderful technical advancements. We need to be putting more attention, not just into patient education and consumer education about these diseases, but also into further treatment protocols that at the end of the day provide something a lot more than management and hope to a patient.
Tell me about, well said, by the way. Tell me about your clinical trials.
Yeah. first and foremost, clinical trials are interesting. They don't always work, right? But I've been lucky where my success rate in clinical trials has been better than my failure rate. One of the last trials that we concluded was looking at what's called major depressive disorders. Now, these are a substantial group of patients, very prominent in Western world. So in your case, in America, 1 in 3 people diagnosed with depression will be a major depressive disorder. And basically what that means is they're not responding to medication. Typically, medication in depressive disorders is an antidepressant, right? So for us, commonly, they are what's called an SSRI or an SNRI, and these are common medications prescribed to those patients. By non-responder, it means they're taking the medication. They need to take the medication. In some cases, there could be a real legal or an ethical reason why they're taking the medication, but they're not responding. The physician is not getting the desired outcome that he or she would otherwise expect with that patient. But there is no better alternative. So we were looking at simple things, and believe it or not, they actually came from the food supplement area. And in many cases, they were specific probiotics. You understand what I mean when I say a probiotic, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. In many cases, they were unique probiotics. And when I say unique, it wasn't that the bacteria was super special. It was the ratio of 2 or 3 common bacterium we were using and a mineral that when used with the SSRI, we were getting treatment response in 8 weeks, which was staggering. We ended up doing it's been a long morning since 3 a.m. I started. We ended up doing confirmatory trials to this, and again, in a wider group of people through a university up here in Brisbane. So a very, very similar outcome to which, we've published in this area. But there is premise that specific bacterium that are common in probiotics, and I say specific more around the ratio of those bacterium, and a specific mineral with an SSRI yields far more effective results. The patient is responsive as opposed to being non-responsive, and it does it in as little as 8 weeks. Don't get me wrong, this is not something we can rush to market and go, hallelujah, we've cured depression. I would love that, but we're not there yet, right? It does need more work. It does need larger trials. I think the last trial that we finished up on was 130 patients confirmed into the trial out of 1,000, 1,100 that interviewed for it. Beyond that, when I think back the past few years, most of my trials have been in pain, especially oncology-related pain. So that's pain associated with cancer, because that's horrific. I have a personal story with that where I lost my brother to cancer, and this was many years ago. But what he went through in those end stages is a story it's all too common. Epilepsy, pain, weight gain, loss of sensory perception, like he didn't know who he was sometimes. Sometimes he couldn't recognize me or family, and he was in and out of this state, and then you had these mood swings, which are a side effect of the anti-epileptic drugs that made him intolerable in some cases and an angel the next, and the shifts were that quick, right? And if you speak to someone that's witnessed this first time, and like I said, it's all too common, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And Alex, that's my brother, he really sort of pushed me to sort of up my game when it came to that space, because I've got to be honest, outside of holding his hand and telling him everything would be all right, I was useless. So that's sort of where I've navigated. And the whole point has been better understanding of the disease state, better understanding of what we can do around it now and longer term, and hopefully, the development of either new treatment protocols or new drugs. And when I say drugs, I'm using the term, let's say generally, and that could be a food supplement, it could be nutrition, right? Or it could be an actual prescription medication that we all know. The hope is that one day we, as I said before, give these people a lot more than hope and rigorous management so that they can, quote unquote, live with their disease.
Well said. I have two questions. One of the questions is geared towards talking about your clinical trials a little bit more in depth. So, the clinical trials that you do with the probiotics, we all know that the stomach is connected to the brain. Like, for example, we have flight or flight or something like that with
Yeah, you're
the.
doing well. Keep going. Yep.
So now y'all are really thinking about ways to help, the brain with antidepressants and probiotics, because the brain and the stomach go hand in hand. I think that is so brilliant.
So we can break this down a little bit further, and I understand what you're saying. What we refer to is the gut-brain axis, right?
Yeah.
And influencing this axis.
Mhm.
And in many cases, the probiotics play a direct role, but it's not the probiotic.
Okay.
So you got to think this way. When you take something by mouth, it goes through all this, and the outcome is whatever that was, it gets broken down and digested, right? And we hope that a fair amount of it gets metabolized, which means it's uptaken through the liver and goes through the body. In many cases, that's not the case. We know most people have a gut complaint, and the outcome of that is they either can't go to the toilet, or they have diarrhea, or they're nauseous, or there's vomiting. There's some reflux to that, right? So the idea was, when looking at that gut-brain axis, what is the mechanism to which that axis is impacted? And from our studies, certain probiotics in certain combinations will produce a metabolite. And a metabolite is a secondary compound that is produced as a result of that metabolism. And it happens in all forms of foods, compounds, whether it's natural or it's organic, that passes through the liver. And it's these metabolites, and I think the kitschy word at the moment with marketers is postbiotic, but it's these metabolites that can either make you sick or it can make you healthy. In our cases, what we were doing is we were gearing these probiotics in these ratios to make these metabolites, right, which become part of normal chain in human physiology. It's these metabolites that cross the blood-brain barrier, and there's your outcome.
Oh my God, I'm like a kid. That is so wonderful. Okay, what are y'all doing for clinical trials for the pain medication? Since, oh yeah, and sorry what happened to your brother. I am so sorry. Tell us,
You don't
what do
need to
you
apologize.
change that process?
Yeah, I don't talk a lot about Alex. Alex is still close to my heart, and there's things I share, there's things I don't. But Alex was the nexus for me to jump back into it, and I have some wonderful relationships with some very research-driven, hard science, but open-minded oncologists. And I really do value my friendship with them. And I wouldn't have been able to do any of this without them, and actually without two of my mentors by my side. So where do I start? I might as well address the elephant in the room. The substance we were using was cannabis. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not telling your viewers to run out and, Hail Mary up on cannabis because it's going to solve cancer pain. That's not what this is about, right? And we never got to phase 3 trials, but we did extensive clinical trial work across around about 1,500 Australian patients that had neuropathic pain, so that's nerve pain or bone pain associated with their cancer. And the results are staggering. So we did a mix of CBD THC. We did it both in synthetic and in natural form. Unfortunately, the natural form was not natural by the time we'd finished with it, because we were working to a drug protocol, so we had to purify it. And with cannabis, there is a lot of purification work to do, right? And we got to a formulation that was equal parts, and we had to develop a delivery platform So that is a chemical construct to rapidly and evenly distribute the cannabis in the body, right? If I can, I'm going to segue for a sec. Half the problem with medicines is we ingest them, right? Super convenient way for the patient. Take a pill, take a capsule, right? You pop it and that's all you think about, right? If you're a bit older or younger, you have choking hazards and other things that come into play. But for the general part, super, super, super convenient for the patient, right? From a medical efficacy point of view, it's the worst way to take a medicine because everything it goes through down here is designed to break it, smash it, kill it, hinder it, degrade it is the terminology, right? So the time it actually gets to where it's meant to go, if we follow, default matrices used in medical school, a tablet is maybe 1/10 of its capability. So I'll put this in another way. You go see a doc and go, oh, doc, I'm hurting. And he goes, I want you to take this tablet. It's a 100 milligram tablet. You'll be right. Off you go. If your gut and your liver are working fine, then we know as a general rule, you're going to absorb 10% of that tablet because that's what this is designed to do, right? Now, if you use capsules, it's a little bit more. If you use liquids, it's a little bit more, but that's by mouth because this pathway is designed, as I said, to break down. That's what your acids do. It breaks it down so that it can be absorbed. But in doing that, you kind of throw a lot of the good out with the bad, okay? And that's just natural human physiology. There are other ways to give medicines, which is why in some cases, your doctor might elect to inject you with a substance. Now, most people curl up in the fetal position and get balls of sweat when they see that little silver pointy thing, but we get, at a fraction of the dose, a lot more of the medicine into you quicker, and we've got more control over it, right? Which is why it's, in many cases, it's favored. Now, in that, you can go to IV, where they put the thing in your arm and it's coming down the drip, and that's about as pure as you're going to get. So everything between that IV and that tablet you pop in your mouth produces a scale that's kind of sort of this wide. And then all the other ways we can take a medicine systematically fulfill that scale. So we built a delivery platform that is a significant step up from popping something in the mouth and ingesting it so that we could control these cannabinoid molecules systemically in the body, give a lot less of them, but get an efficacy rate that compared to a tablet or to a liquid was somewhere around the vicinity of 8 to 10 times stronger than its tablet equivalents. We did that for two reasons. Number one, the regulators had big concerns about the potential for abuse, right? You got to remember our laws here in Australia, when it comes to medicines, when it comes to foods, when it comes to food supplements or nutraceuticals, is grossly different to the US, right? So we built in a capacity to risk mitigate potential for abuse, right? But then there are a lot of secondary side effects with cannabis that comes up in the media. A lot of marketers dismiss them, but there is still work being done on them today because we truly don't understand it. And a lot of those side effects come around because remember what I said with the probiotics about the metabolite story? And remember I said that metabolites are a natural process for when you ingest something. So those metabolites that THC produces are the things you don't want, right? Whereas the probiotics, we had engineering good metabolites. The metabolites from ingesting THC are real health concerns, and they're well documented. So we wanted to get around all that, produce a better safety profile, but at the same time, provide an application that allowed super quick onset of the drug. We got drug onset down to under 5 minutes without breaking the skin. Compared to a tablet you take, depending on your gastrointestinal function and health and your liver function and health, those tablets can go out to 90 minutes before onset hits, not peak. So we had a new drug, well-defined, through its phase 2 trials, 1,500 patients, and we were alleviating pain and at the same time de-risking patients to overuse of opioids, because that's common practice in these type of patients. Real qualitative science, very, very exciting stuff. But coming out of COVID, we couldn't get back to those patients. Insurance costs went through the roof. Cancer patients were not returning to hospital because such a scare they got during the COVID days. And subsequently to that, we had to shut that program down. But the data is there. It is hugely compelling. My hope is one day someone will pick that up and run with it. I think there are properties in cannabis, natural or synthetic, that has value to the human health cycle, especially in mitigating diseases. But again, I don't want your audience charging out, running down to the local dispensary going, oh my God, I was on the Kimberly Cloud show and they've told me I've got to take dope. Just give me as much dope as we can, because that's not what this is about, right?
Can you tell me where you're going in the future?
At the moment, I am working with some patient groups and I am working with a couple of companies on product innovation and change in therapy. The big thing I'm working on at the moment is I'm actually writing a book. I've got the second one in right now. The first one is with my editor. And in that, I'm trying to simplify and amass a lot of work that I've done over the past decade. And I'm putting forward an argument that if we keep on this present trajectory, if we don't start taking charge of our own lives, if we don't go back to self-education, and by that, I don't mean checking out the latest Instagram story, right? If we don't act as a society and come together and start working functionally and efficiently together, then we're going to de-evolve. So I'm writing books on an evolutionary theory called a Dysevolution, which is about us de-evolving from our current trajectory. And I say that because it's getting harder and harder now to work with people, and it's getting harder and harder in having them understand what a good choice is versus a bad choice. When you look at population data, right? We can't control obesity. It's like a running horse and it has left the paddock. Diabetes is the same thing. Mental health is out of control, right? World Health Organization 2 years ago said it represents 5% of global populations. And the disclaimer was, that's on what they know, right? So as a human race, I'm concerned about where we're going. I'm concerned about what we're leaving for our children. So I've taken to writing. I've got a really good editor, and I'm hoping that in the next 6 months, the first book will be published. And the second book, which will be a continuation from that, is probably around about another 6 to 8 months thereafter. Outside that, it's time for a bit of a lifestyle change. I enjoy working on product. I enjoy working on clinical trials, but more so the point, I got a taste of this a few years back and I really did enjoy it. I really do enjoy working with people who want to change and challenge the paradigm and look for ways that they can educate, they can enrich themselves and their loved ones, and ultimately become better, not just as a person, but better in their community as well.
Well said. Do you think artificial intelligence may play a role also in eliminating pain if we can figure out, deeper what's the causes? And, we got cancer, but what's inside that cancer that's connecting to the veins and the arteries that's causing it? And what can artificial intelligence, could it in the future be injected or something?
So I'm not going to say I'm an AI guru. I have a 25-year-old son that still teaches me how to turn my computer on sometimes. Just for record, I'm 54 years of age. So, I kind of missed a little bit of that techno thing. Jules and I have long debates, especially about AI. I can see good and bad. The bad I want to point out real quick. AI can only be as good as its programmers, right?
Okay.
So if we're punching all this stuff into AI now Our knowledge is limited. I know we like to think we're the smartest people and we're the sharpest tools in the shed, but it's not true, right? We just have to face facts. We don't know everything, right? So if we're programming these systems are only going to be as good as the people that programmed it. Now, some people say it's got adaptive learning, but adaptive learning still relies on a program. So what it's been told to learn from becomes a real limiting factor. In time, and I don't know what that exponentially looks like, once we understand a disease, right, we understand pain, we understand the mechanisms, and those people who understand it, and let's say really understand it, are evolving this AI program. And there is constant, let's call it software updates to that, because what we learn today is different to what we've learned yesterday, right? Then AI has a chance. I do get concerned when I look at technology as a whole, that as a race, we're really, really quick to adopt. And we don't stop to think how that technology can be used in other ways that's not an enabler for us and becomes a hinderer, right? And we see that all over the place, right? You know, you pick up news articles, whether they're fake or real, I don't know, but the news articles are out there about how all these people that use this app are now complaining about this, and this looks illegal and all this sort of stuff. I think there is good reason to take a pause and think for 2 seconds, right? As a species, we're becoming more and more reactive, less thoughtful, right? In many cases, I look at some of these apps that my eldest son uses and I'm like, why do you even need it? Well, I mean, what does it do? Oh, if I do this, it does that. And I said, yeah, but you can do that. You don't need an app to do that. So, and I know I'm speaking really generally because I don't want to throw companies under the bus. That's not what this is about, right? But as a general whole, I think it would be good for humanity every now and again just to tap that brake pedal and go, can we just stop and think about this for 30 seconds? I don't want to overthink the problem. I don't want, you know, huge debates about it. That's not what it's about. But does it really benefit me? Can this be used in a more detrimental or deconstructive way that ultimately I'm going to have to pay for at the end of the day?
Well said, well said. And how can the people find you? We're going to end there.
I'm happy to give you my email address. I don't know how I do this over this, but my general email address is dr, so Dr. Dr, S for Sean, M for Michael, H for Hall @gmail.com. And I'm happy for them to reach out, providing it's not too silly and it's not like I have this condition, what can I do? Because I don't practice as a doctor. I'm happy to talk to people. Otherwise, Kimberly, if you have questions, you're more than welcome to come back to me and say, hey, Sean, can I get your take on these couple of things?
Thank you so much. And you know I will. Thank you so much. You guys take care. Stay on the line. You guys take care. Be safe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Cheers.